Here's what we're watching today. Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius didn't mince words. He went public with something that's been whispered about for a while. Two Russian satellites have been shadowing the satellites Germany's military depends on. Not passing by, not drifting by accident. This is deliberate. These Russian Luch or Olymp satellites have actually maneuvered close enough that operators can't just write it off as coincidence. Now, what does that mean? In orbit, especially geostationary orbit, satellites don't just bump into each other. To sidle up next to someone else's satellite takes intent, fuel, and planning. That kind of movement is calculated. It's a signal. And it makes Germany nervous for a reason. Because when someone moves that close, they're not just sightseeing. They could be listening, watching, probing, maybe even rehearsing for an attack. Pistorius laid it out plainly. Russia and China have expanded their capabilities in space. They're not just putting satellites up for TV channels or weather forecasting. They've got systems to jam communications, blind optics, and even manipulate or physically damage someone else's satellite. And here's the kicker. Germany says it has already been on the receiving end of that jamming. This isn't a theory. It's real. It's happening now. So how is Berlin responding? Money talks. They're committing 35 billion euros over the next 5 years to strengthen their space defenses. That means better surveillance, more resilient communications, and yes, even talking openly about offensive options in space. Because if one side is willing to poke and prod and harass, the other side needs credible deterrence. And you don't get deterrence by only playing defense. Now let's slow down here. Why does this story matter? Why does it matter to Germany, to NATO, to the rest of us? Think about the pattern. We've been watching this build for months, on the ground, at sea, in the air, and now in orbit. Remember the airport hacks in Denmark? Drones interfering, systems disrupted, the suspicion that Russia was behind it? That was about testing Europe's resilience on the ground. How quickly can you react? How much disruption can you handle before confidence wavers? Remember the tankers in the so-called shadow fleet? Ships sailing under gray ownership, dodging insurance rules, hiding identities, sneaking oil around sanctions? That's at sea. Another form of gray zone pressure, staying just shy of direct confrontation, but eroding the rules. Remember the Russian jets cutting into Estonian airspace? That's in the skies over NATO territory. Not a one-time accident, but a steady drip of, let's see what we can get away with. And now it's satellites. The pattern repeats. Probe, pressure, normalize the abnormal. On the ground, at sea, in the air, and in space. Germany calling this out is significant because silence feeds normalization. If you don't talk about it, if you don't point to it, people assume it's not happening or it's not serious. By going public, Berlin is saying, we see it, we know what you're doing, and we're not going to treat it as business as usual. Let's talk about the satellites themselves for a minute. These Russian craft are from the Luch or Olymp series. The first one that raised eyebrows went up in 2014. Open-source satellite trackers have followed its movements for years. It has a reputation for sidling up close to Western satellites, sometimes within just 10 or 15 kilometers. Now, in space, that doesn't sound like much. But in geostationary orbit, where things are parked thousands of kilometers up, that's uncomfortably close. That's like someone hovering a drone 10 feet from your bedroom window. They're not there by accident. And the newest one, Luch 2, launched more recently, has shown similar behavior. In 2024, trackers noted it suddenly closed in on another satellite in a way that looked planned, not random. So Germany has every reason to be sounding the alarm. Now, here's where this gets even more interesting. Pistorius said there are 39 Russian and Chinese reconnaissance satellites passing over Europe every single day, transmitting data in real time. That's a dense net of surveillance. It means Europe is being watched constantly from above. Combine that with the jamming Germany has already experienced, and the picture is clear. This isn't just about one or two satellites acting suspicious. It's about an entire strategy of pressure. Let's zoom out for a second. What's really happening here is the militarization of space. For decades, space was treated as a support domain, communications, navigation, weather. Yes, there were spy satellites, but there was also a kind of gentleman's agreement not to interfere too much. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 set the tone. No weapons of mass destruction in orbit. No claiming the moon. No overt militarization. But the treaty didn't account for the kind of harassment we're seeing now. Shadowing, jamming, interfering. It's not technically breaking the treaty, but it sure feels like aggression. And that's the gray zone. That's the same gray zone we've talked about with tankers, airports, and airspace. Stay just below the threshold of open war. Keep your opponent off balance. Force them to spend money, time, and political capital defending against you. That's the strategy. Germany's response, the €35 billion investment, is about plugging the gap. Building sensors so they can see what's happening in orbit. Hardening their satellites, so jamming is harder. Investing in rapid rerouting and resilient communication networks, so a single point of failure doesn't bring everything down. And maybe, just maybe, developing tools of their own that can push back. Whether that means dazzling an enemy satellite, spoofing its sensors, or even having the capability to disable it if absolutely necessary. Now, I want to tie this back to the bigger question. Why is Russia doing this? Why shadow German satellites? Why jam communications? It's about leverage. If you can make your opponent nervous about their space assets, the satellites they rely on for military communications, navigation, surveillance, you've got power. You've got bargaining chips. You can shape behavior without firing a shot. It's coercion by proximity. And here's the risk: escalation. If one side gets too bold and the other side decides to push back, suddenly you have a satellite collision or a jamming incident that spirals. And unlike the ground, where accidents are messy but containable, in space, debris can linger for decades, threatening everyone's satellites, civilian and military alike. So Germany speaking out today isn't just about protecting its own assets. It's about drawing attention to a bigger problem. If shadowing and jamming become normalized, the rules of the game change, and not in a good way. And that brings us right back to the themes we've been talking about for weeks. Hacked airports, tankers running dark, airspace violations, and now satellites shadowing each other in orbit. Different domains, same strategy. Pressure at the edges. Stretch the rules until the rules don't hold. Germany's response? Call it out, invest in defenses, and talk openly about deterrence. That's their line in the sand. Now, what does this mean for NATO? Expect more cooperation on space surveillance. Expect more allied statements pointing to bad behavior in orbit. And expect discussions about what counts as a red line. What kind of harassment can't be tolerated anymore. And if you think space is far away and doesn't affect you, think about this. Those satellites power GPS, global communications, weather forecasting, stock market transactions, airline navigation. Mess with space, and you mess with daily life here on the ground. So this isn't just Germany's problem, it's everybody's problem. That's where we'll leave it for now. This story isn't an isolated oddity in orbit. It's another chapter in the bigger book we've been reading, the one about creeping pressure and the erosion of norms. And Germany's message today is pretty clear. They see it, they're naming it, and they're preparing to respond. If you've been following along with us, you'll see how it all connects. From the hacked airports, to the sanctions-dodging tankers, to the airspace incursions, and now to satellites being stalked in orbit. The pattern is the same. The stakes just keep getting higher. That's the update. And as always, if you found this useful, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.